Hey, welcome. Today we are going to do a simple video on how to do routine alignment, keeping the blade parallel to the bed. Something that if you're sawing full time, you should probably do about once a week. This is a really easy way to do it. I love doing it this way. It's way better than how I've seen a lot of other people do it. This is nice and simple. Today we've got an LT50 in here. Let me spin the camera around. Brand new LT50, just going through and checking alignment. This one's actually a wireless, which is pretty cool. May at the end of the video do some do's and don'ts with that. So what I've got here is how I like to do it. Park the head between the first two fixed bed rails. Get it down to a small number, about 5 inches or so you don't have 10 feet of tape sticking out. Clip the blade guide alignment tool on top, in between the gullet so the teeth aren't hitting it out of position. Once you've got it in place like this, it's really easy to do it. Keep the guide roller all the way out on this side, all the way out on that side. Check them independently, and by the time you're all done, you should probably be exact measurements on all 4 points. There's a lot of talk about how this side should be up a little bit. If you want to do that, you're free to make your own choices, and you can do that. I like to keep it pretty much parallel and check it more often than have it set back a little bit. 32nd of an inch, 16th maybe, higher on this side to account for when the saw is pulling in, it can pull down a little bit. That's up to you. You do your own choices. I like to set them up with just a tiny bit more on this side, but not very much. As long as they're all equal, then that's kind of what you're shooting for here. Account for guide roller wear. If you've bumped anything during sawing or anything's happened, this is a good way to check that. So let's get into it. So this may seem simple to a lot of people, but the number of troubleshooting calls I get regarding wavy cuts and so on and so forth, a lot of guys I ask is like, hey, when's the last time you did an alignment? And they're like, well, I check it once in a while, maybe every so often, but this is something that should be done frequently. So like I said, I've showed you the setup. Grab yourself a tape, and the first thing I'll do is just measure down. Like this one's out quite a bit. We're 2 5/8 on this end. We are 2 3/4 on this end, so the blade's pointing uphill. Now for those that don't know, the shaft that the guide roller is mounted to goes through here and pivots through this hole, which acts as a fulcrum point. This, if you lower this down, it tilts it up. And if you raise this up, obviously it has the adverse effect. So grab yourself a 1/2 inch wrench, 9/16 on the older mills. And in this case, since we're pointed down, we're going to loosen this one, probably substantially. Tighten the bottom one, and that is going to tilt this blade more parallel. That's quite a bit actually. Lock that back down. You don't need to put 700 foot-pounds on these or the jam nuts. You'll end up stripping everything out. So just snug everything down so that you don't move. Once you've made that adjustment, bring your tape back. Just a hair above, too. And you want to repeat this process until you're exactly even. We're pretty much there right now. Hair above, 2 5/8, hair above, 2 5/8. And that's it. Once you've got her level, your parallel, just snug everything down. Bring your jam nuts back down, and like I said, don't torque these in the next week. Just give them light snug, and that's all it needs. And on the other side, we're going to perform the exact same thing. This one is 2 3/4 and 2 3/4. This one's actually perfect. So if it was out, you would do the same thing you did to the other side. This is now about a 1/16 of an inch higher on this side than it is on the inside, so I'm going to leave it like that. That's totally fine. And this is now ready to go. So once you're done, lock up all your jam nuts. Don't over tighten them. Snug them all back up. Now, like I said, this is just something that you would perform weekly if you're sawing full time, or if you notice that it's cutting a little wavy. This is just a really easy thing to check. Now, that's something that's very, very easy. If you're going to get into this a little more complex, I may do another video later on about the more in-depth alignment, but I'm going to walk you through it right now. So periodically, you're going to be at that point where like things are just way out. I want to start from scratch. So if you're at that point, you'll go to your guide. Sometimes the easiest thing to do is just remove this nut or this bolt and this bolt. Remove the guides completely. Same on the other side. Take the guides right out of the equation. Put a band on your mill and strain it up So the band is just going from wheel to wheel. There's no guides in the machine. Then drag it back, again, base everything off of your first fixed bed rail. Now you would have a band on the mill with no guides on it, no down pressure or anything else. And it's going to tell you at that point how your mast is in relation to the mill. So you would measure from, once you strain it back up, you would measure from the heel of the band down to the bed, and the heel of the band on that side down to the bed. And that's going to tell you if your head is drooping or whatever. If it's not parallel, that has to be set. So with no guides in it, that's the time to check it. In which case, you would come down to these bolts here and the two on the front. That is going to set the mast parallel to the bed, or the head, sorry. So if it was pointing too far down, you would loosen these inner ones off and move them all the exact same. Sorry, I was interrupted with a phone call. So anyways, like I was saying, you would use those bolts to do small increments, like maybe a half turn on the inside on all four of them, and then tighten the outside ones a half turn so that everything's snug. If you start getting it out, you're going to get all bindy if everything gets all out of whack. So move everything the same amount, then go back and re-perform the measurement from the back of the blade down to the first fixed bed rail, and keep doing that until it is 100% parallel to the mill. What happens is over time, as the head starts to droop, you may be taking it out with the up and down of the guide rollers themselves. So as the head starts to droop, you're compensating by pushing down the guide roller itself using this adjustment here. You loosen these off and you can extend and lower this, and then all of the pressure is going to be on one side versus the other. And then you'll notice that when you're sawing, the blades will be going through the log, and you'll notice that the guide roller wheel is starting and stopping and starting and stopping. It's usually an indication that you're out of parallel. So once you've got the mast hung back parallel, don't move the head height, take the band off, reinstall your guides, and now that measurement should be 1/4 of an inch less than where it was before, to ensure that you have exact 1/4 of an inch down pressure on either side of your rollers. And in all honesty, that is going to be what makes this really, really cut well, is that positive down pressure of the guide rollers running back up 1/4 of an inch to each wheel. And now that you've made that mast adjustment, you may have to go back through and readjust these back to a level playing field. So you'll repeat that measurement with the guide rollers installed, and now you'll use this adjustment bolt here. You loosen these off. If you tighten this up, it draws the guide block up. If you extend it, loosen it and extend it down, it moves this back down. At that point now, the head is hung parallel, the blade is now parallel, and you have the exact same guide pressure from roller to roller. And then you would double check this measurement here. That combined with the proper strain, and really that's the keys to making these things really, really cut true and give you consistently straight lumber. I know I kind of glossed over this, but any questions, leave them in the comments. I am going to do a full video on the step-by-step breakdown of how to do this start to finish. Hopefully this makes it easier for you, a little bit less daunting of a task. I know a lot of the guys are hesitant to do this because it can turn it into a nightmare here real quick by getting everything out of whack. Just take your time, take your measurements, make everything equal, reinstall your guides, make sure everything is equal after that. Run the correct strain. A lot of these mills now, let me spin this around. If you have the older style gauges that had that little green, yellow, red kind of thing that was right about here, those were notorious for being out. And also, if you take the strain off and you notice that this needle isn't back down at the 0 position, it's sitting up a couple of hundred, then this gauge is shot. It would be a good idea to replace it. Wood-Mizer now uses a really good quality machinist gauge, and it's been way more accurate. I have a stretch measuring tool that clips on, calibrate all these, and they're always accurate. 3000 PSI is where you want to run. This one is spun off a little bit, but that's where you want to be. 1.5-inch bands, 2800 to 3000. It's obviously right in front of you when you're staring at the mill, but if you got an older one and you don't know, replace the gauge. It is well worth your while to do so. And if you're not sure and you think that you've done all of this and that still isn't really quite cutting the way you want it to, if you want to know if your gauge is out, try going another couple of hundred PSI on your strain and then see if that makes it cut better. At the end of the day, you'll get longer blade life, better cutting performance. I mean, ideally, you should be able to run this until you physically can't stomach the finish of the saw anymore before you change it. If you find yourself putting a new saw on and it cuts good for 20, 30 minutes and you notice it's starting to get a little bit wavy, these things can make you get extended blade run time, truer lumber, and everybody wins. So hopefully this helps. And if you found something useful in this or you learned something, hit the like button so I know that these are making it worthwhile. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Give you an example. This is the stretch gauge that I use clipped onto the band. It measures the stretch within the band and registers on the dial gauge. At just under 20, this should be the safe zone for where you should run any one of your bands. And on this machine, as you can see, the old gauge on there is almost at the 6 o'clock position. And like I said, where it's at right now, that needle should be registered between the yellow and the orange, kind of in the safe zone. So that's something else to keep in mind if you have one of these older machines. Don't be afraid to go and try running it just a bit higher to see if it increases your cut. Oh, and in case anybody was interested in the wireless portion, if the mill is on, you grab the wireless unit, pop the reset button out, hit this button here, it starts to flash. Push it in one more time, it starts to flash repeatedly. When you pop it out one more time, when that yellow light starts blinking, she is paired. And this controls all of the head functions. Goes up, down, pretty slick.